Hello, everybody. Welcome from super hot, boiling London. How are we doing? Hopefully, it's a little bit more pleasant where you guys are, because here it is, in fact, like shockingly hot. And I know that we keep complaining that the weather is not nice, and it would be nice if it got a little bit hotter, but maybe this is a little too hot for comfort, I have to say. So this is where we are, and we are coming on today to talk a little bit more about the SQE and MCQs and all the rest of it, ladies and gentlemen. And I mean, I don't know if it looks better than usual, but the image that I've got looks a little bit better. I've got a new computer here, and the camera appears to be slightly better than what we normally get. So hopefully this has improved a little bit the visuals of what we're having, and it's going to be fun for everybody. So how are we doing? We've got, man, it's already July, isn't it? So yes, I think it's already July, and we have, is it 14 July for SQE1? I'm afraid it is, yes. So we are starting SQE1 on July 14th, which is precisely 2 weeks away. How are you guys feeling? I recently joined some groups on Reddit, and I think they're quite good fun, because people in Reddit are a little bit more chatty than the people on Facebook. I mean, we've been running our Facebook group for quite a while now, and strangely, there isn't a great deal of interaction on Facebook, even though there are a lot of people there. So the Facebook group has got something like 4,500 members and counting, but there's limited interaction. Reddit, on the other hand, even though there seem to be smaller numbers of people on Reddit, they seem to be more agitated and, willing to talk and to support each other and to communicate, which is, fantastic news. So I'm trying to engage a little bit more with Reddit to see if I can reach the community that way. So there is an SQE prep group that I'm posting there, and I've had some good interactions with candidates, but I've also set up my own SQE group, which I'm calling SQE Preppers. I don't know. I'm watching a lot of American movies lately, so maybe that's why the kind of prepper idea stuck to mind. But we're not preparing for the apocalypse; we're preparing for the SQE, even though it might feel the same for you guys at the moment. But yes, the SQE should be slightly more survivable than the apocalypse. So yes, so I called the Reddit group SQE Preppers. I'm gonna put the link down in the description for you guys to follow it. The problem is I don't quite know how Reddit works, so I'm posting stuff. I think people see them, but since I've had no interaction, I'm not 100% sure that this is actually working and it's visible for people. So, if you manage to get up there, and if you're, I don't know, what do we call the people who are on Reddit? Redditors? Help me out here. If you're part of those communities and you want to stick a message and say hi, that would be super awesome. Yep. So we have made it. This is session number 6 for these SQE discussions. It's great that we've got some people live every time, which is really great. So I've got a couple of people watching this live. So thank you guys for joining in. And how are we getting on with our prep? There seems to be a little bit of anxiety going around, and I can understand that 2 weeks time, that everybody's getting tired, everybody's getting stressed. We are now dealing with this kind of immense heat if you're in the south of England as well. So that's probably not contributing to everybody feeling particularly great about themselves, but we will persevere. And remember, you're not the only ones. I mean, everybody goes through the same experience, and everybody has the same trouble here, trying to kind of stay motivated and stay awake and stay sane and keep on working on the questions, and trying to do more and more multiple choice questions to just get on top of the concept of it all. And in a way, this is what we're doing here today. So we're going to do some more multiple choice questions together in a moment. And I think the more you try, the better it gets. Because if you're into a prep school, obviously in a lot of tests from the prep school. The problem is it locks you into a mentality and a style. And of course, all prep schools do their best to approximate exam styles and exam conditions when they're putting together their MCQs. But you'll see a lot of discussion that certain people are saying this prep school has a habit of having more difficult questions than the actual exam. People often say this about QLTS school, for instance. For some of the others, people are complaining that they're too easy. Some people said this about the Barbary questions. The other schools, I'm not so sure. It depends on the context as well. I've written some of the questions that we're using for the Open University students who are preparing for the SQE pathway, and I think we were a little easier than we should have been on those questions. But each prep school adjusts to its cohort of students, is trying to kind of build on their skills and kind of nudge them into the right direction. So it could be that differences in, not in style, because everything needs to be in the same style, but the differences in complexity and level of difficulty perhaps have to do with the school working to build up the capability for the students that it's got, as opposed to them not knowing what the questions are like. And even though I keep saying this, we don't have past exam papers, so the SRA does not give us the benefit of actually publishing the past exam papers so we could see what these things are actually like. They have given enough samples so everybody can now tell what the questions should look like. So don't assume that little differences in complexity between one prep school and the other are because, whoever put together the questions doesn't know what they like. Everybody knows. They're just trying to adjust to the style. And to be fair, in a week's time or so, I'm sitting in a workshop with Kaplan where we get to sort of compare the questions that we come up with, what the other prep schools are coming up with, and to sort of benchmark against what the questions should be and the level of difficulty and all the rest. But to come back to your preparation, what is the best thing for you to do right now? Do not rely on one single set of questions from one single provider. I think the best results can come if you're diversifying the questions that you're attempting. So what you can do is work from the ones from your provider, then work from some in a different format. For instance, the Revise SQE books that they've got books with banks of questions. Both FLK1 and FLK2 are quite good, so I would recommend you have a look at those. Also, the format can help. Some of them being online, some of them being on paper. It kind of helps you stay awake a little bit. And I think it's a great idea to attempt banks of questions that are created from apps and providers. Now, the vast majority of those are AI produced. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them, okay? In all probability, the ones you get from the prep school are also AI produced, but they don't actually have the guts to tell you about it, yeah? So the ones that are produced by AI are perfectly fine, especially the ones that are vetted and checked by people. So I do some of the curation for the AI-produced multiple choice questions that are coming out of law drills. I'm going to give you a link to those down in the description so you can go and have a look at those tests. And we put together some mini mocks for people to try. The fact that they've been produced by AI and then they've been curated by me means that they're perfectly fine. So don't let the sort of artificial intelligence element of the preparation of those resources put you off. If anything, they're probably better and more diverse than the ones that people are writing from scratch. And, trust me, as I told you, I've been writing MCQs for quite a while, and you tend to lose your mind. So if you guys think that it's boring to attempt the MCQs, imagine what it's like to write them. And to think about the sort of pattern that we've got, that you need to have like a chunky scenario question that goes on for like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. And then within this, you need to make it complex enough to be meaningful so the answer is not kind of jumping out obvious. So you need to implement a level of complexity within the way that you structure the scenario. And then you give people 5 possible answers. And out of these 5 possible answers, you can only have one correct answer. So the model for these MCQs, as we've said in the past, is the single best answer. Now, since you got 5, how are you going to make that selection? 2 or 3 are likely to be wrong, right? Not spectacularly kind of crazy wrong, has got nothing to do with the topic wrong, no. But let's say 2 out of the 5 are going to be wrong. Either they misrepresent the facts, or they respond to different facts than the ones given in the question, or they get the law wrong, or they talk about a different legal principle altogether. So out of your 5 options, 2 are gone because they're wrong, okay? Now, for the 3, you're going to have the single best, the most plausible answer, but you're also going to have 2 that are close enough. And this is where the difficulty comes. Being able to kind of filter out the really wrong ones, easy. But being able to figure out from the potential ones which one is slightly more correct than the rest is tricky. And that, as we said, can only be solved by you going again and again and again and again in your prep and doing as many questions as possible to get used to that mentality and that churn. And also, keep your eye on the clock, guys, because you've got less than 2 minutes per question. So the element of speed is what makes this all the more challenging, because you don't really have the time to kind of agonize endlessly about, out of the couple or 3 possible correct answers, which one is slightly more correct than the other. You have to actually make that decision very quickly. And imagine within these less than 2 minutes, right? The time it took you to read through all these chunky scenarios and then to read all the 5 possible options, discard the ones that are clearly wrong, and then select from the ones that are left there. So this is an incredibly hard task in the time frame that you're given. And I'm not telling you this to freak you out, but I'm telling this to you because I can provide you with a solution. The solution is you work then quickly, okay? You work quickly, and you work because you're used to it. And the more you're used to it, the more MCQs you do, then the quicker you get and the more confident you get in your responses. And remember, backtracking, not a good idea. Do not second guess yourself. As with every type of exam, and specifically with multiple choice questions, we do well the first time around. So our initial recollection tends to be better than anything else. So if you then start doubting yourself, you're much more likely to get confused and forget what's going on than if you kind of jumped in straight away from the beginning. Okay? All right, cool. So we've got a few people watching us live. If you guys are finding this helpful, hit the like button, and or give me a message in the chat. Or if you're watching this on the replay, leave us a message in the chat as well. So we've got, as I said, 2 weeks before we hit the SQE1 sitting in July. I'm going to do another live stream like this next Tuesday, which is going to be the last one, right? Because I'm not going to do an MCQ live stream while you poor guys are sitting the exam. But perhaps, depending on what the community wants to do, maybe we can have like a kind of hangout, or we can just kind of chill and talk to each other in the week that the exam is taking place, just in case anybody's kind of freaking out and wants to touch base with other candidates. So if you would like to organize like a kind of hangout session, not specifically like an MCQ answer session, then do let me know somehow in the various messaging options that we've got, and I'll think about that. Now, other than that, if you're preparing looking forward, so you're not actually sitting now in July, but you're thinking about sitting in January, there are a few things coming up. First of all, I would recommend that everybody subscribes to my newsletter, which is newsletter@glintis.co.uk. So every Monday, I send you guys a multiple choice question for you to think about, and then I'm giving you tips and reading suggestions and things to look at and discount codes from relevant services and apps and all of that stuff. And I also give you the fully explained answer from the previous week's question, a fully articulated answer, explanation as to why the correct answers are correct, why the wrong ones are wrong, and things to look out for, and so on. So this is all free. If you guys want to sign on to the newsletter, you have to email newsletter@glintis.co.uk with subscribe in the subject matter, and then I will add you to my list, and then you will receive that on Monday. What else do we have? Yes, we have more things. So I'm going to, let's see how we're going to do this. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Now, this being a new computer, I cannot tell you with confidence that this is going to work, but we're going to try it. Okay. Let's see, because I'm seeing a little bit of a delay in the video here, so hopefully the whole thing is not stuck. Let's see, where's the share? Share is here. Nope, that wasn't the share. Okay, let's try a different button. Yeah. Oh, Okay. Hang on a second here. I forgot to put this big screen so we can actually see it. So I've got it read mode. Okie dokie. Let's see. So hopefully, and I started off on the last page. No, I wasn't meant to start on the last page. I was meant to start on the first page. Here we go. Here is the first page. Yay! Hey, well done, new laptop. The camera works, so far as I can tell. The sound works. If you guys are not hearing anything, do let me know in the chat. And now we have shared the screen. Isn't that a technological advance right there? Well done, everybody. Okay, so what did I want to show you? Why did I bring this up? So we've got, first of all, I've been enjoying myself making music. I don't know, are you guys into concentration, background music? You know, something that kind of plays, something instrumental that plays in the background while you study, while you're kind of cranking away MCQs. Do you have any kind of audio background to what you're doing? So I was thinking about this, and my kids were preparing for exams and stuff inside, and on occasion they were listening to music, and I thought, hang on a second, this might be a good thing. So when I was a student and I was kind of preparing for exams, I had like the radio in the background, or I had the Spice Girls CD, because yes, I am that old. So I was here, ladies and gentlemen, doing my undergraduate law degree in the days of Cool Britannia. Yes, Spice Girls and everything. How fancy things were back then. Tony Blair just came in, everybody was super excited, lots of things were happening, and then we all know how it went for the next 30 years after that. But yes, so I thought a bit of background concentration study music might be a good idea. So I've been trying like a few different styles, and I've been putting them up on the channel. So I've produced those with you guys in mind. So I was thinking, if I'm an SQE candidate and I'm going through like gazillions MCQs on some sort of app, what do I need in the background to kind of keep me agitated, to keep me awake, to keep me engaged? And I'm coming up with these tracks. Now, if you like them, I would love it if you listen to them and you enjoy them and you kind of hit the like button on those videos. If you don't like them and you prefer like a different style of music, some yodeling, I don't know, what would you like? If you would prefer some different type of music, then kind of let me know and I can try and produce something else. I'm producing these with AI tools, obviously. And I've got quite good options in what I can do. So if you would like a different style of music, we can attempt a different style of music as well. And my latest project that I'm very excited about is the podcast. So after discussions with quite a few people were telling me that there's a lack of a nice podcast focusing on SQE1 prep and taking people through the FLK. So with that in mind, I came up with the idea of launching this functioning law podcast. And these are clips that go from like, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes. They're kind of that duration. They're not like super long, but they're a nice discussion between two hosts, Theo, who's like the subject expert, and Anna, who is the SQE candidate. And they're discussing amongst themselves one theme at a time. So one FLK topic at a time. Now, clearly, again, these are AI voices. The script is produced by me, but I think it's an interesting and engaging way to take people through the content, and perhaps not as boring as just listening to a short lecture about the topic. So if you guys want to give this a shot, have a look around the channel. It's easy to find, or if you kind of Google functioning law podcast, there aren't that many. So you're going to find it. Give it a try and let me know what you think. And there are 3 episodes at the moment that are free for everybody. The rest are available for channel members, and they're kind of rolling out slowly. So even if you're not a paying member of the channel, you'll be able to see them soon. But yeah, I think it would be helpful. And what I'm doing on top, I'm producing flashcards because people were also asking about flashcards and whether I could make some of those or where they could find some of them. So I'm making some flashcards that explain the key concepts on the topic that the podcast is about. And these flashcards are available to kind of click and download. Everything's free, right? From the video that the podcast is on. So every episode that has a specific deals with a specific topic within the FLK comes also with a nice set of flashcards as a PDF thing that you can download and keep. And hopefully this is all good in helping you guys with your preparation. Okay, so this is what is going on in terms of projects. We're continuing we've got another session coming up of this live hangout, and we've got the study music that you guys can enjoy. We've got the newsletter that's going to send you the MCQs every Monday, and we've got the Functioning Law podcast that is working its way through various aspects of the FLK. So we have like an entire bank of all the topics that we can listen to quite nicely. So the revision never stops, right? So this is assaulting you from all angles. So you're going to be sitting there reading from the book, and then you're going to be having classes, and then you're going to be commuting home and listening to the podcast in the background. So you don't have a second of rest from the SQE stuff. It's going to chase after you no matter where you try and hide. Right. So, okay, shall we attempt some MCQs and see how we're feeling about everything today? Yeah? So let's see. We're starting with Emma. Emma is walking through a shopping center, and she slips on a large puddle of water that had been leaking from a dodgy air conditioning. The puddle had been staying there. It was there for over an hour, but nobody placed a warning sign or tried to clean it up. Nobody did anything. They just left it there. So Emma fell. When she slipped, she managed to fracture her wrist, and now she's thinking of suing the shopping center's management company. Her argument is that the center owed her a duty of care as a visitor, and their failure to address the hazard is responsible for her injuries. The center's management denies liability and says they were unaware of the leak and cannot therefore be held responsible. Which of the following factors will be most relevant in determining whether the shopping center's management company owed Emma a duty of care and breached it? Is it 1, whether the shopping center took reasonable steps to prevent harm to visitors? Is it 2, whether Emma was wearing suitable footwear at the time of the accident? Is it 3, whether the center management intended for Emma to suffer harm? Is it 4, whether Emma's injury was severe enough to justify a claim? Or is it 5, whether the air conditioning unit was installed by a third-party contractor? Aha! What do we think? This scenario sounds a little bit American, right? That people go into Walmart and then they have a fall and then they sue them for billions. This isn't the kind of thing that really happens in the UK. I've seen when I was doing an internship in a solicitor's firm in Colchester, they gave me something that looked like a price list for personal injury claims, right? And the amount of recovery was just nothing. Okay, so you had like a few £100 for missing a finger, a few thousand for missing a hand, or missing an arm and stuff like that. And you're thinking, really, this isn't the kind of stuff that I see in the movies that one kind of breaks a nail in the States and then they sue them for millions. Yes, personal injury claims in the US and the UK are a very, very, very different business, right? So here the recovery is very, very limited, unfortunately. But it doesn't mean that because the recovery for personal injury is limited, then shops have the freedom to go around and injure people because they're not paying attention. So what we're trying to figure out here is, why would the shopping center owe Emma a duty of care? So the correct answer is that the principle that we're interested is number 1. Whether the shopping center took reasonable steps to prevent the harm to visitors. So this is the law of tort, and we're talking here about statutory duties under the Occupiers Liability Act of 1957. What the act requires is that businesses take reasonable steps to keep the visitors to the premises safe. Therefore, leaving a puddle there unattended and not cleaned up and without any warning signs is very much likely to make the shopping mall liable for negligence. Now, number two is incorrect because it's suggesting that Emma is at fault here for not having appropriate shoes. Well, this would only be relevant in the sense of contributory negligence, meaning that if she was negligent in the way that she was carrying herself that contributed to the injury, that does not negate the liability of the shopping center. But what it does is it might reduce the amount of damages she can claim if the court assesses that she part of the loss is due to her own fault. Oh, we've got a message from one of our members. Hi, Fosa, how are you doing, man? Nice to see you. And we've got quite a few people watching us live, which is awesome, guys. Say hi in the chat, and feel free to talk to each other in the chat as well. It's not this isn't supposed to be a kind of lonesome experience. We're here to kind of get together as a community, right? So we said number one is the correct answer because the statute implies a duty of reasonable care for the health and safety of the visitors. It is number two is relevant, right? But it's not the best possible answer because something that might be contributory negligent might reduce the amount of damages paid. It does not negate liability to begin with. Now, number three is wrong, okay? So negligence does not require intent. It's about having a duty and then breaching the duty to take reasonable care. So that's clearly wrong. Now, four is also wrong because the severity of the breach of the duty does not depend on the severity of the accident, right? Any action that is negligent that results in harm then raises liability. Now, how severe the harm is will feature in the amount of damages that get claimed, but it doesn't feature as to whether they've been negligent or not to begin with. And five is also incorrect because having a third-party contractor does not negate occupier's liability. There might be some issues about the contractual performance if the thing that they put was faulty, but the occupier by the statute is the one who is responsible for the well-being of the visitors to the premises. Why there is a danger and whether that danger results from the negligence of a third party is something that we have to worry about further down the line. It is not relevant to Emma's claim. So what we've got here is we've got one good possible answer, which is number one. We've got something that is relevant but not very, very close, which is number two. And then we've got three of them that seem to be wrong. So to go back to what I was telling you earlier about the way in which we approach the questions, for every question, we have to figure out which ones are the outliers, the ones that are completely wrong, right? And discard them, and we can do this fairly quickly. And then we spend more of our time from the potential correct ones in trying to figure out from the ones that seem to match more closely, how close are they in their match? And then we select the single best possible answer. So this is a process that we have to go through every time. Some questions are easier in the sense that either you know the topic better or the topic's more approachable. I mean, contract and tort questions I can do all day long than business law. If you hit me with all the probate stuff and with the property law and land law stuff, then I'm less competent in those, so it takes me a lot longer to work my way through the questions. So the questions might seem easy because you're very comfortable with the substantive content, but also it could be that the potential answers could have more clearly wrong ones, which makes it easier to filter them out than other questions. So always think about this. Think about, you have to do this at speed. You need to eliminate the wrong ones to get them out of the way. And then from the ones that look plausible, figure out which one is the single best answer. Okay, let's see what Emma gets to next. All right. So we still got Emma here, who's going around here business and getting into various types of trouble. Emma, in this one, purchases a laptop from Tech World Limited. She spends £1,200. After just 3 weeks of normal use, the laptop stops working. It's completely dead. Emma contacts Tech World and asks for a refund, but the store refuses. They say that she must contact the manufacturer for any repairs. Emma is unsure about her rights and wants to know whether she's entitled to a refund, a replacement, or a repair. Under the Consumer Rights Act, what are Emma's rights when a product becomes faulty within a short period after purchase? Is Emma entitled to a full refund because the laptop developed a fault within 30 days? Is Emma obligated to accept a repair or replacement first because the refunds are only available if the product cannot be fixed? Can Tech World refuse a refund because only the manufacturer is responsible for dealing with product defects? Or 4, Emma has no automatic rights because the laptop was in working condition when she bought it and faults can happen after time? Or is it the last one, 5, Emma is only entitled to a partial refund as retailers are not required to provide full refunds after a product has been used? Okay, now this normally should not be too bad because the vast majority of candidates either have an appreciation of contractual rights and consumer rights because it's the kind of thing that we do quite a lot of in law school, or you guys have come across this material and it's easier to navigate, or people know this because they're working in this domain because a lot of people have to deal with this stuff, or this has actually happened to you, so you've got kind of first-hand understanding of what consumer rights are. The question here is a little bit more specific because the question is asking you what happens under the Consumer Rights Act of 2015, right? Okay, we've got a question as to the year of the act. Well, you might have a situation where the MCQ identifies a particular act as is asking you to find the correct answer in relation to that act, as we've got now. A multiple choice question that asks when was the Sale of Goods Act made, you're very unlikely to find because this is just too simple for it's too simple for the SQE, right? So if you're an undergraduate law student, you might get really simple multiple choice questions and say, which is the correct statute? Is it Sale of Goods Act 79 or 82 or 2015 or whatever? But for the SQE, where we've got scenario-based questions that go through the function of the law rather than testing very shallow understanding of where is what and what's going on, I wouldn't expect a question that is asking you to differentiate different acts on the basis of date. I mean, you never know, but I think it's a bit more unlikely. Here, the question identifies the Consumer Rights Act because we've had changes from the previous legislation with the Sale of Goods Act and what is happening now with the Consumer Rights Act. Nothing fundamental, but the Consumer Rights Act clarified certain stuff that were not 100% clear under the previous statute. And before we would mention the statute and then rely on case law for the explanation, now we're on safer ground by using the information in the Consumer Rights Act. So what is the correct answer here? The correct answer here is that Emma can get her a refund. So the correct answer is number 1. She can get her a refund because the laptop developed a fault within a short period after purchase. Let's see. It says, hang on, 3 weeks. Yes. So 3 weeks would be 21 days. It would be within the 30 days. So it's not option 2 sounds relevant, but it's not correct because this is too close to the purchase period. Under the Consumer Rights Act, if the goods are faulty, then you've got the right to a refund or repair or replacement at the selection of the customer. So they cannot force you to accept a repair if it is within the 30 days. So for this, you can have a look at Section 20 of the Consumer Rights Act of 2015. If the fault develops afterwards, then you might go through a process of repair or a replacement. Now, currently, in the way that the question is structured, because it does say 3 weeks of normal use, then I think it's safe to assume we are within the first 30 days, which the Act gives a right of a full refund. And it does say the laptop stopped completely. You see, that's why we need to be careful with the details. This would have been easy to miss. Yeah, because you could have focused on it was working, then it broke, and then it's completely broken, and kind of skip over the fact that it says 3 weeks. Yeah, and that's one of the small things that can differentiate outcomes in these questions. If it was after 30 days, then the retailer must offer a repair or a replacement before you claim for the refund. And that would be under Section 23 of the Consumer Rights Act. But this is plausible, but not exactly what's happening on the facts of our case. Number 3 is wrong, because rights under the Consumer Rights Act are against the person that you're contracting with, and you're contracting with the shop. You're not contracting with the manufacturer. Yeah. 4 is also wrong, because, yeah, you do have rights. It's not like if it works when you get it, then nothing else exists, because the implied terms under the Consumer Rights Act, they've also got expectations of durability. Yeah, because otherwise everybody could be ordering stuff and then they could like break within a week and you have to order another one. Of course, the expectation of durability is not the same for everything, and the nature of the product, the price of the product, the quality of the product will affect our expectation as to durability. So if you get like a very cheap smartphone, then the expectation of durability is going to be less than you buying an extremely expensive iPhone. Yeah. So this is adaptive. It's not like a hard and fast rule for everything. But in any event, option 4 is wrong. People have got rights and expectations that things are going to continue to work for some time in the future. Now, 5 that says you cannot get the full refund if you started using it is wrong, right? It's not what the law says. One of the things that you guys should be careful with is that sometimes people confuse the right to return or an expectation that you've got the right to return with the right to request a repair or a replacement or refund if it's faulty, right? The rights on fault are statutory rights. So if you buy something and it's broken or it breaks after you bought it and all of that stuff, these are your statutory rights. Your right to return something because you bought it and you don't like it is not a statutory right, it is a contractual right. That's why you should not be surprised that not all shops accept returns, because the returns are not there as a statutory right. The returns are there as a contractual right that the shop uses to incentivize you to buy stuff, because you're more likely to buy something if you know that you can return it. And the reality of the matter is that people don't often return stuff. But if you buy something and it turns out you don't like it and you try and return it and they tell you, oh, yeah, we don't take returns, don't lose your mind over it, because you have no legal right to the return. The return is only contractual. If you guys didn't know this, tell me in the chat, because my undergraduate students are so often confused and they're thinking, I can return it within 30 days if I don't like it. And they think that this is one of the rights that comes under the Consumer Rights Act, but it is not. That's why we all buy stuff from Amazon, because the returns there are simpler than everybody else. And I've been in this situation, right? I got a phone from Samsung and the phone was faulty, and I had to argue with them for me to send it back. Isn't that spectacular? I mean, on Amazon, you never have to argue. You just do the form and says, I don't like it, and then you send it back, okay? Or especially if you tell them it's faulty, then it's even quicker. But I had to argue with Samsung to remind them that I've got a statutory right to return for a refund, yeah? And it took some convincing, so I'm very disappointed in Samsung. Okay, now let's move on. You're gonna tell me that's the reason why all of you guys have got iPhones. But, I'm hanging in there. I'm not I'm one of the last few remaining people resisting the iPhone domination. So I'm just buying a bunch of other stuff that admittedly don't work as well, but are way cheaper. Yes. Okay, now, new question. Green tech. Where are we? Green Tech Limited is a renewable energy company. They've gone into insolvent liquidation, and that's because they failed to pay their debts. The company has 5 million in outstanding liabilities, but only 2 million in assets that are available for distribution amongst its creditors. They owe money to a bunch of people. These include secured creditors that have got fixed charges, employees, HMRC. There are unsecured trade creditors as well, and at the end of the list, they've got the shareholders. The liquidator has the job of distributing the company's remaining assets in accordance with the statutory order of priority under UK insolvency law. So the question for you, what order will Greentech Limited's assets be distributed amongst its creditors in an insolvent liquidation? Who's going to get what and in what order? Are we going with first the secured creditors, then the preferential, then the tax, then the unsecured, and then the shareholders? Or are we going with unsecured creditors and then the secured and then HMRC and all that? Or are we starting with the government? Are we starting with the HMRC and then we do secured, unsecured, etc.? Or are we starting with the shareholders and then everybody else? Or are we starting with preferential creditors like the employees and then we go unsecured, secured, and all the rest of it? Now, if you guys have done insolvency, or if you've gone through the few videos that I've got with company law, explaining insolvency, explaining what happens there, then you know this stuff already. It is a tricky area, so if you're not much exposed to it, this can be very confusing. But the correct answer, as we've got the correct answer in the chat already, thank you. The correct answer is number one. So first we get to pay the secured creditors, then we do the preferential ones, and that includes HMRC. Then we do the unsecured, and then in the end, in the unlikely event that there's something left, that something goes to the shareholders. All right, now let's take a second here to kind of make sure that we all understand this. Secured creditors are the people with a fixed charge. This normally is a bank. What does a fixed charge mean? It means that they've registered on the company's books, and you can see this information if you retrieve the company's information in Companies House. They've registered the charge against specific assets. In the same way that if you get a mortgage to buy your house, then if you see the title deed is going to have there's going to have information that says there's a registered charge from X bank against this company. It means that if somebody needs to make a claim against your assets, then the bank has a pre-existing claim over the house. So a fixed charge achieves exactly this, meaning they've got first stab at a specified asset against which the charge is registered. And that's why usually the holders of the fixed charges are the banks, because normally the big lenders are the ones who are going to go through the trouble of registering a charge. And it's not only the bureaucratic hassle of registering a charge with Companies House, it has implications in how a business can run itself, because you are not allowed, if you're the business, you're not allowed to dispose of assets that are subject to charges. If you want to do anything with it, you need to have the consent of the charge holder. So in effect, you've given away some of your ownership freedom and sovereignty over your assets by having a charge registered. That's why it's for big amounts or significant proportions of your asset base. And because it's so significant and burdensome, they are the people who stand first in line to collect if your business goes under. After this, we have what we call preferential. The preferential are the employees, the pension funds, HMRC, any unpaid VAT, corporation tax, that sort of liability. Yeah. So in a few years back, HMRC was further down, but now they've elevated HMRC and VAT obligations together with the preferential creditors. It's because HMRC realized that they were losing too much money. Because when a company goes bust, they go bust because they don't really have a great deal of money. So imagine once the fixed charge holders have gotten hold of all the kind of capital equipment and the vans and the buildings and the big machines, then there's hardly anything left there to liquidate to satisfy anybody else. So if the fixed charge holders were taking it and then the preferential were taking it and then there was nothing left. So they brought HMRC up in this chain. So you've got the secured, you've got so the fixed charge holders first, then you got the preferential, then within that you got the HMRC, and then you get the people who've got the floating charges. These are people who have registered an interest for protection, but it doesn't count as high as the fixed charge holders because a floating charge gives a greater degree of autonomy in dealing with the asset, because the floating charge identifies an asset class as opposed to a particular asset. So when some particular specified event happens, like the appointment of administrators, then we say that this floating charge crystallizes and it attaches to a specific asset, and then the charge holder can come and collect that specific asset. But the link between the specific asset and the creditor is not as direct as the one that you've got with the fixed charges, and that's why the floating ones come a little bit lower in the preferences. And after that, you've got the unsecured creditors. Unsecured creditors are unfortunately everybody else. It means normal trade creditors, the suppliers, right? The people who gave the business stuff, the energy company that was supplying the electricity. So everybody else, including their own customers, right? So if say a running business has got a series of expenses, so they're using the phone, but they have to pay the phone bill. They're using the electricity, they have to pay the electricity bill. They've already taken orders from the customers, collected their money, but they haven't given them the goods yet or the service. So these are all ongoing obligations that the business has to take care of. If the business goes bust, everything freezes, meaning that the utilities supplier who provided the service are now at the end of this queue waiting to be paid, and the customers who have orders, who have perhaps prepaid for those orders, they are again left waiting in a queue to get paid, and they're not sure to get their stuff back. I don't know, depending on your age, I don't want to call anybody out, but we've got some people watching us live. Depending on your age, you might remember various things that have gone bust. Yeah, we used to have a phone chain in the UK on the high street called Phones for You. Anybody remember these guys? Phones for You. They were like shops. They had shops in the high street, so you could go there, pick a mobile phone, and then they would sell you a package of the device that you wanted, and then they would kind of connect it with a supplier of your choice, and they would make an attractive package for you. Back in the day, I'm talking like 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, that's how most people used to get new devices. Now, of course, everybody orders everything online, but back then you tended to go into the shops. The only one we've got left at the moment, I think, is the Carphone Warehouse. Have you guys seen any of those lately, or have they disappeared as well? So the Carphone Warehouse appears to be the last kind of high street retailer of mobile phone contracts and devices and so on. Anyway, Phones for You went bust. And the funny thing is that there were people who had paid for the phone, and the phones were there in the shop, and we could see them because there was a Phones for You next to the uni. So, and a lot of our students used to shop there. And it's funny because if you had prepaid for a pay-as-you-go phone that came in a nice box or just a device, you could have prepaid or paid a deposit. The phone with your name on it, on the box, would be sitting there on the desk where the till is. But from the moment that the shop went bust, even though there was a box with your name in it, you were not allowed to go there and retrieve it, even though you paid for it, even though they set it aside for you, even though you had your name in it. Because the moment that the administrators got appointed, all the assets became part of the asset pool that then gets distributed according to this list. So unfortunately, it didn't matter that a student of mine had ordered a new iPhone and the iPhone was just sitting there on the till and we could see it through the window, right? But we couldn't go in the shop. And he was like, that's the phone for me, right? But they wouldn't give him the phone because there was, first of all, there was nobody opening the shop, right? But secondly, even if they could get into the shop, they wouldn't give him the phone because the phone now became part of the asset class. And my student was an unsecured creditor, meaning that the administrators would need to pay first the fixed charge holders, then the preferential creditors, then the floating charge holders, then they would get to normal creditors, unsecured creditors, suppliers, and customers, and so on. So my student did not get that phone. Which is bad news. And there are ways that you can protect yourself against this happening to you. I've got a few videos about what to do to position yourself in with the best possible of recovery if you're dealing with somebody who has gone insolvent, or if you're worried that you might be dealing with somebody who might go insolvent. But there's specific videos on the channel that you can watch on this later on. The shareholders, and to finish off this, the shareholders are the ones at the end of the line. So in the very unlikely event that there's anything of value left and they've satisfied all the previous creditors, including the unsecured creditors, and there's still some money left, then that money gets returned to the shareholders. Otherwise, the shareholders get nothing. And usually they get nothing in an insolvent liquidation. And you know what? That's fine. It is fine. That's part of the deal. When we were talking about setting up a private limited company that benefits from this limitation of liability, this is precisely what the deal is. You are a shareholder. You contribute to an initial amount of money when you're purchasing the shares. And from that point onwards, you don't have to worry about it. If the company does well, you earn in dividends, or you can sell your shares in the future. If the company goes bust, then you lose that initial payment that you made, but they're not going to come after you for anything else. It is a great deal. So we shouldn't feel sorry for the shareholders that don't get anything in the end after everybody else has been paid off. Yeah, it is part of the deal. All right, so the correct answer here was 1. The correct order of recovery is secured first, then preferential, then unsecured, and then the shareholders. Yeah. If you guys are enjoying this, give me a thumbs up, or leave us some sort of enthusiastic emoji in the chat, so I know that you guys are having a good time. Is it getting warmer where you guys are? It feels like it's getting warmer in here. I don't even know how many degrees it is in London at the moment, but you guys, you know what? Did you know that I also have a YouTube cooking channel? Yeah, I was posting this for years. I've got a lot of stuff. One of the videos on the cooking channel is me cooking an egg in the sun when a couple of years ago we hit 40s. So I went out in the garden and I put the pan on, the barbecue wasn't lit, but I put the pan on the barbecue and I cracked an egg on and I cooked the egg in the sun. And I thought, this is amazing, because this is the kind of trick we used to do back in Greece. So the fact that you can do this in London is quite something. Now, yes, climate change. You see the benefits? Who would have thought that we would be able in London to cook our eggs in the sun? Of course, there's the occasional drawback, but there you go. Next question. In our next question, we've got Daniel. Who's Daniel? Daniel is a recent law graduate. Do we have any recent law graduates in here? If you're a law graduate, say hi. So Daniel is a recent law graduate, and he's considering his career options. He's unsure. What's he unsure about? He is unsure whether to qualify as a solicitor or a barrister, and he wants to understand the differences between the two professions. He's keen in advocacy, and he wants to advise clients and understand the ethical obligations of legal practitioners. He's been researching this. He figured out that both solicitors and barristers must adhere to professional codes of conduct, and that their ethical duties can sometimes differ, particularly in their obligations towards clients, the courts, and confidentiality. The question: which of the following best describes the key differences between solicitors and barristers, including their ethical responsibilities? Okay. Is it 1, barristers specialize in advocacy and have a duty to the court to remain independent, while solicitors focus on legal advice and client representation with a duty to act in the client's best interests while upholding the law? Is it 2, solicitors and barristers have identical ethical duties with no distinction in their obligations towards clients and the court? Is it 3, solicitors are only responsible for acting in the client's best interests, while barristers have an overriding duty to win cases regardless of ethical consent? Is it 4, barristers can only act if instructed by solicitors, meaning that they do not owe independent ethical duties towards clients? Or is it 5, solicitors and barristers are not subject to professional regulation, as ethical considerations in law are purely discretionary? Okay, we've got a few here that are clearly wrong, okay? I mean, this can be a tricky question, in fact, because teaching the ins and outs of the profession and ethics is not something that we do in law school. So, in fact, if you're a recent law graduate like Daniel, in my problem question, you probably never heard of any of this stuff at all. So it can be quite confusing, and there's not a great degree of familiarity with this area of the law. So, but, okay, having said that, there's also common sense. So 5 is wrong. I mean, you cannot, in any sort of exercise of the legal profession, the ethical obligations are not going to be purely discretionary. So forget about 4, forget about 5. Now, 4 also is wrong. Yeah. Whether you instruct directly or whether you instruct through a solicitor doesn't mean that the barrister who then represents you is free from ethical obligations. Now, 3 is also wrong because it's structured in a very weird way. To say that they have an overriding duty to win regardless of ethical concerns really is very far from what's actually going on. So in this question, we've got 3 outliers that appear to be wrong on a quick read of the potential answer. So the correct answer, as we correctly identified in the chat, thank you, the correct answer is number 1. Barristers specialize in advocacy and have a duty to the court to remain independent, while solicitors focus on legal advice and client representation with a duty to act in the client's best interest while upholding the law. Right, now, where is the actual distinction here? Because why not number 2? Should we say that the ethical duties are the same, right? The ethical duties are not the same. The barristers who specialize in advocacy and courtroom representation have an overriding duty to the court, so they need to act independently and with integrity even when it conflicts with client instructions. They cannot mislead the court or act dishonestly. This is in the barrister's code of conduct, which is written by the Bar Standards Board. And they also cannot refuse cases. Yeah. So it basically works like a taxi rank, right? So the first one available needs to take the case. They cannot refuse it if they don't like it. Solicitors, on the other hand, have the main job to provide legal advice, manage cases, and act as the first point of contact. So their duty is to act in the best interests of the client. But of course, the SRA's code of conduct says that they have a duty to support the court in the administration of justice. The solicitors are focused on the client while the barristers are focused on the court. And one of the distinctions between them is that the solicitors have got stricter confidentiality obligations, client confidentiality obligations, right? So even though the core of the ethical obligation is common, the way in which it expresses itself in practice is distinct. So you cannot pick answer 2 that says identical because it's not identical. So from having discarded 3, 4, and 5 for being wrong, 2 is not really accurate. So the best possible answer for this question with Daniel is question 1. Now, I recently published a video on ethics. I think you should watch that one. It's a nice video. It's not very long, and it kind of summarizes the ethics obligations, and it presents the SRA's code of conduct. So I think that's a cool video to have a look at in case you are unfamiliar with this area and you need like a quick brush up. Yeah. And I can tell you this, guys, the ethical stuff chases after you. Yeah. So you are meant to demonstrate, and I have a podcast about this as well. Yeah. And I was doing the flashcards for the podcast and just hit me the other day. So many candidates are sitting there on the socials, on Facebook and Reddit and so on, and they're trying to get people to sell them books or MCQ packs. There were some people on Facebook suggesting, shall we share a subscription? Like, one signs up with a prep school and then gives the material to the other. And I was thinking, this is really, really bad, not because it's kind of cheating in a contractual sense, but it's actually a violation of ethical obligations. When you guys pass the SQE and you complete the process, in order to register as solicitors, you need to go through an ethics check, and you need to be clean for your ethics check. So doing dodgy stuff like that, like kind of double, like booking for a prep school and then sharing the login details with other people, or engaging in kind of copyright violations, or kind of lifting people's resources and distributing them online. This is bad stuff, because if you get caught, it means you're not a person of character appropriate to become a solicitor. So imagine that you go through all this hassle, right? And you go through SQE1 and you go through SQE2 and you spend a fortune and you spend all this effort, and then you cannot register with the SRA because you don't meet the ethics obligations, because you've cheated your way through some multiple choice tests. So don't do it. It's a very silly way to lock yourselves out of the profession. You're saving a little bit of money, but you're actually endangering your future. And to be honest, this stuff is okay. Don't get me wrong, the prep schools are expensive. The fees for the exam itself are extremely expensive. The whole process is very expensive. But some of the stuff that people are trying to obtain for free are actually not that expensive. So, the mini mocks that we're selling with law drills, that I'm curating the questions for law drills, and they're available to purchase as mini mocks. We're selling them for like £7.50. Okay, so I mean, you want to do like a mock exam and you're going to spend less than you would spend on a pizza, just do that. It's really not worth the risk of trying to cheat your way to some of these resources. Yeah. All right. So, rant over. So let's see our final question. Here it is. Julia. Aha. Julia operates a small catering business. She enters into a contract with Fresh Farm Limited to supply fresh produce on a weekly basis. Fresh Farm repeatedly fails to deliver goods as agreed. So Julia is losing customers, and she's lost profits that she calculates to be £8,000. Julia decides to bring a claim for breach of contract to recover her losses. She seeks legal advice on the appropriate court and procedural track that will handle her case under the civil procedure rules. Which court and track would be appropriate for Julia's claim? Should she go to the county court in the small claims track because Julia's claim is less than $10,000 and involves a straightforward contractual dispute? Or should she go to the high court in the multi-track because the dispute involves a business-to-business contract? Or should she go to the county court in the fast track because Julia's claim exceeds $5,000 and is a business dispute, which requires formal procedures and expert evidence and so on? Should she alternatively just go to the magistrate's court in the small claims because the claim is small and straightforward? Or the last option, high court fast track, because contractual disputes involving commercial businesses must always be heard in the high court. So we have one suggestion in the chat that says number 1, county court. Have you guys noticed how the correct answer is always number 1? Maybe I should mix this up a little. Yes, otherwise it's becoming too predictable. It's not like really realistic, is it? But yes, I will agree with our friend there, Fosa. Yes, it is number 1. County court, a small claims track. Why? Because Julia's claim is less than 10,000, and it is about a straightforward contractual dispute. So you will all know that under the CPR, there are various courts and various tracks that the cases get allocated. So the complexity and value of the case reflects the procedural complexity in putting it forward. This is one of the ways in which the CPR attempted to revamp the system. So not all claims would go through the same kind of difficult and expensive processes, but the simple stuff would get done quicker with less bureaucracy, and the more complicated stuff would go through the whole experience. Now, the small claims track is there for disputes up to £10,000, and these are typically handled in the county court. The idea is that you've got something that's straightforward and deals with low-value cases, consumer, simple contractual disputes efficiently and quickly. And the procedures are not particularly formal. Parties can represent themselves. They don't need solicitors and all that stuff. Because Julia's claim is only £8,000, it would be appropriate for the small claims track in the county court. So I think that's fine. The fast track is for things that are between £10,000 and £25,000. It's a bit more formal, but it is streamlined and it's got limited hearings. Normally, cases in the fast track last a day. Now, the multi-track gets worse because this is for complex claims that are worth more than £25,000. So high-value, complex matters that need detailed management by a judge. So the other options are wrong for these reasons, right? So county court, due to the nature of the dispute and the value, this is what we should go for. If we won't go to the high court, we won't go to the fast track. Magistrates is not for this type of dispute, and that's it. So effectively, this is the sort of question that all your options are going to be wrong apart from the one that's actually correct. It relies on your recollection of the levels, okay? So remembering that £10,000 is the sort of benchmark that you've got, the value benchmark from going to a more complicated process is what you need to do. Okay, how are we feeling, guys? We feeling good? Did we find the experience valuable today? No. Who's preparing in here? We've got people watching live. Who's preparing for SQE1 in 2 weeks' time? Who is it? We will give you a virtual hug. Yes, nobody is. If everybody's preparing, if you if you're watching this on the replay, let us know in the comments under the video whether you're preparing for this one or whether you're kind of holding out. Oh, we got one. Oh man, there, virtual hug for you. It's gonna be fine. Try not to panic. Try not to bend yourself out. Bending yourself out, especially when it's 40 degrees out there, might be easier to do than earlier. But yeah, so it's gonna be fine. And think about the good stuff. Soon, in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, once you've gone through the exam, this is gonna be behind you, and then you can like enjoy your summer without having to do MCQs. So, there we go. So good. So we're gonna be here next week. Same time, probably in different place, but same time online. Till then, enjoy yourself to the extent possible. Hang in there, do as many MCQs and kind of mini mocks and all of that stuff, and and stay sane and stay hydrated and cool in this weather. And I will see you guys again soon. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice rest of your day.